Welcome, 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 wherever you're coming to us from. We are so happy to have you here today and be with us, and so appreciate your choosing to do so. And yeah, most grateful. My name is Cheryl, and this is my co host,
I'm Barbara.
Barbara, my sister from another mother in another country.
I love that.
So before we carry on, we always like to just acknowledge the lands that we are on. And so we acknowledge the indigenous peoples of all the lands, whoops, we are on today. We acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people everywhere. And we say miigwech.
Miigwech. Hi, Wayne.
So,
Here.
Barbara, what are we talking about today?
Oh, we got a juicy one today. We're going to talk about death and dying. I did a
Mm-hmm.
I did a series of interviews a few years ago called the F and D word because you're not supposed to say the F word in public. And of course, talking about death and dying also, most people don't want to talk about that either. So I
Mm-hmm.
figured the two kind of went hand in hand, but created some really interesting conversations with people about what their perception of dying was and what it was like for them to be in that environment where, they get, an idea that somebody is really sick and may die. How do they react to that? Because I had friends who got sick and people stopped phoning them.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like, wow, that's nasty.
Yeah.
And the big thing I got all the time was, well, I don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
is nothing to say, but you can hold a hand, you can tell a joke, you can read a book together, you can have a coffee. Like,
Yeah.
they're still who they always were. Why do we
Yeah.
run away?
Yeah. That reminds me of a time. I had a friend in South Africa who had cancer, and I was really close to her, and I got a phone call from her sister saying, I don't think it's going to be long, and so I decided to go over and to be with her for a couple of weeks. And I did. And when I walked into the room, I actually got such a fright because her body was literally out of shape.
Yeah.
And she had this big lump, and it was just quite scary, but I never showed it. I just looked at her, with love as my friend. And she told me afterwards how much that meant to her, because everybody that, came to see her, most people would she would see the shock in their eyes,
Yeah.
and that was hard, but just
Mhm.
being able to be present and not show that shock, but just show the love, was so important to her. And I think that's what's important to most people, right? Is
Yeah.
just to be with her, just to, you don't have to say anything, or or do anything. It's
Oh,
just, what do you need? What can I do for
yeah.
you?
I remember a friend of my husband's who became my friend as well, who was dying of brain cancer. And we decided that, I would visit him once a week as a kind of spiritual coach kind of thing while he was going through the process. And we just would sit and we would chat and just, talk about all kinds of things, laugh about stuff. And we planned his celebration of life service together.
Mm.
So that made it really easy for his children when he did pass. They did not have to do any of that. It was already done. And it was really quirky and really him, which was like super fun. Because I think, I do a lot of celebration of life or memorial type services. And some of them are absolutely so incredible because they really reflect the life of the individual who's passed,
Hmm.
which makes it like really, really beautiful and very healing for the
Hmm.
people who are present, because we don't focus everything on the moment of passing. We focus on the life that caused us to
Absolutely.
love that person
Yeah.
or dislike that person, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
two things there. The fact that it was planned, I think what a gift to the children. Like, oh my gosh, right?
Yes, yes.
It just makes life so much easier for them. And thinking about, celebration of life or memorial service, like it brings two different things to my mind,
Yes.
and I'd rather celebrate the life and have my life celebrated then it be called a memorial service.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear from others what they think. How do you feel about it? What would
Mhm.
you like? We were just having a quick conversation as we always do before we come on, and was saying like death and dying are the most inevitable things that we know of, right? And yet we live
Exactly.
in denial. It's like we don't talk about it. It's like it's going to happen way in the future.
Not always
You,
the
we,
case.
yeah, exactly. And so it's the way we're brought up, really, to sort of live in that denial. And I think it would be so much healthier if we talked about it from an early age, that it's a
I
normal
agree.
part of life, right?
Well, the same as birth, right? Birth and death,
Mhm.
two sides of one coin. I mean, it's something we're all going to have the experience of, and it can be whatever we make it. We can resist death. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means there's a level of anxiety that we're living with that, how is that serving us, right? Like, that's not
Mhm.
really serving us. And when we let go of that anxiety and choose to be present in the moment, then there's some delight and excitement where we can sit back and enjoy each day for whatever it is, whatever.
Mhm.
And when somebody close to us passes, we can grieve. We're not saying, don't grieve or don't feel a sense of loss. Absolutely feel what you feel and just know that it's inevitable. We're
Mhm.
all going there. And the fear that we have around it is kind of counterproductive, shall we say.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah, even being okay with death doesn't mean that one isn't going to grieve.
exactly.
But we do that in a different way. We each have our own way of processing and of grieving and of moving through the process. I don't remember the steps, but I know that there's five. I think it's five steps of grief.
Yeah.
Where you sort of there's anger and there's sadness and there's denial and there's all these different stages that
Yeah.
one can go through, and that's okay. It's this I you know for, and I think that most people will agree it's the space that the person that is left leaves in our lives, and what does it mean in my life not to have that person around, right?
Yeah,
And
it's all
that's
about me, right?
yeah, exactly. That's what we grieve the most, right? Oh, how am I going to live without them?
Yeah,
Right?
what's my life gonna be like if Cheryl's not here to talk with me on
Yeah.
Spirit Cafe? Like,
Ex-
that would not be fun. It's and so it really comes down to, it's all about me. But if
mhm,
we can move that aside for a minute, like if, I the people that I've spent time with on their deathbed, it's it's been a wonderful experience of different types of conversations, and everybody has a different way of dying, shall we say, in the process. And it's always fascinating to me to look at the conversations that we have. Like with my friend who we planned his memorial service, his celebration of life. One of the songs he wanted played, one pieces of music was I Am My Own Grandpa. And if you've never heard it, play it. It is one of the most ridiculous songs ever. And it just made me laugh like crazy. And people in the room were like Say what? But it was his sense of humor coming through at the end. And even when I did the celebration of life for my dad, one of the things that I did was tell, you know, a type of joke that's family friendly, but a really silly joke because my dad was a joker. He told jokes all the time. And so to weave that into the service, so we had people crying and then laughing, and it was like that's the life that was lived, right? Like
Mhm.
we take that life and we share it. And then just a few months ago, I did a basically a celebration of life for a woman who was choosing her death date. So she was doing a medically assisted dying process, and she had set her date for September and planned this celebration of her life with all of her friends and family in June. And we got together and we had this beautiful time together. And in August, her health diminished quite rapidly, and she chose to move up her death date, and she died in August. And it was so beautiful. It was, and for all the people who were there in the room, I don't know, easily 7 or 8 different people come up to me and say, you need to do this for everybody. Everybody needs to do this. It was so powerful to
Mhm.
be able to talk about the nature of life and the journey that we're all on and the process that we go through. And I told that same joke that I told at my dad's. And so that kind of broke the mood a little bit so people could have a chuckle, which helped to sort of soften the energy in the room. Because when I walked in, it was a bit heavy, right? Because people were like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose her, and
Mhm.
soon. And
Mhm.
to be able to, sit with what's going on and allow the energy to just flow wherever it goes, and to trust instinctually what would be appropriate and what wouldn't be.
Mhm.
It's part of
Mhm.
what, a trained memorial officiant would be, how we would learn how to do that. So I was really grateful for the opportunity. I'd never done one before. I spent hours and hours and hours writing this thing, going, I have no idea how to do this. And when I got there, I did not use the material I wrote.
Wow.
I was able to just open my heart. I spent time with her. I got to chat with her, got to know her because it was her niece who hired me. And it was like her and we got to know each other, spend some time just chatting. She talked with all her friends and everything. And then I did the service. And it was in a restaurant, in a private room in the restaurant. And it was truly, truly beautiful.
I love
Beautiful.
that.
Yeah, it was
I love
great.
that. I think that that's I to me that's the way to do things, right? And that way as well, to include children. It's like a celebration, and it should be celebrating the life of someone.
Mhm.
I would love that for myself, quite honestly. And I think, to hear those things before you die, rather than for
I
people to
know.
say them after, like, oh my goodness, right? And sometimes it may not always be wonderful, and that's
Right.
okay. What it needs to be is authentic.
Yeah, it needs to be
I think
honest.
that's it. It needs to be authentic from the heart, and I just think that's a beautiful process. And yeah, we should be doing more of that. We could be doing more of
We
that.
could be doing more of it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And what I found is interesting is because so many people have moved away from religion, that we're finding more and more where people are like, what am I going to do? My mom's died, or my sister, or my friend, or I'm dying. And what do? I don't go to church on a regular basis. I don't, or at all, maybe. And I don't have somebody to do this thing when I go. And a lot of people go, oh, I don't need anything. Well, I'm here to tell you it isn't for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for the people left behind. It's that when a person passes, they leave this empty space. They leave this hole. And what are we going to fill it with? And when we
Mm-hmm.
start telling stories and we start sharing their life with each other, and we share stories back and forth, all of a sudden it's like the hole gets filled, not with chemicals or food or something destructive, but with the love and the release maybe of anger and resentment. It's a combination of things that allows us to fill that space in a
Mm-hmm.
really healthy way.
Yeah.
And that's what begins the process of real healing, is when we honor what is rather
Yeah.
than pretending it's not there.
Absolutely. And it's a way of also saying farewell. We love you. We
Oh,
won't forget
yes.
you,
Yeah.
and depending on what you believe, farewell for now, or,
Yeah.
uh,
Mm.
Neil Donald Welsh calls the day that we die our continuation day, which
I
I
like
just love, right?
that.
Because, I know that both you and I believe that there is no such thing as death. We lay down the body and we continue our journey, right?
Exactly.
So what do you believe? The people that are here, type in the chat. What do you believe? Do we continue? Do we? Is that it? Is that the end? When Barbara and I talk, these are our. They're coming from our feelings and belief systems, and we acknowledge and recognize that that's not everyone's, and that's okay. And the
Yeah.
whole point of this is to have that conversation, and to think about, what is it that I believe, and what is it that I want at the end of the day, and who would I want to be there, who would I want to officiate, whatever the case may be. But these are just our beliefs and our feelings and opinions that come from our experiences. So we definitely appreciate that. That's not everyone's. I
No,
also want to just take the
yeah.
time, Barbara, just to mention, people will see that a link to Spirit Cafe YouTube channel has been posted, and being shared. And the reason for that, and there's a place to sign up as well that I believe has been posted, is that this is the last time that we are actually going to be streaming to the Unity YouTube channel as well as the CSL. And the reason for that is that we want Spirit Cafe to stay on its own platform, because it is our opinions, our beliefs, and our experiences, and not necessarily those of the organizations that we both work for and we both have trained in. And so it's important to acknowledge that, and to keep things separate so that it's never taken as such, and to honor Spirit Cafe's journey itself on its own, right? So just so you
Exactly.
know that, please sign up for the reminders and for the links, because they will no longer be in the Unity Kitchener newsletters and the CSL on the Lake as well.
Yeah. So, and we want to be able to talk about it from any perspective. You're going to hear our thoughts and feelings, but that doesn't make them right, and it doesn't make them yours. And we want to have conversations that share differing ideas, thoughts, and opinions. And so I want to invite you just to ask the questions you want to ask, share your thoughts. We would hope there would be nothing racist or hateful, but to share your opinion of your journey and what you believe is possible. Because I really think through having honest conversations with each other, we come to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no greater value than that, is to find out a little bit more about the people that are in your life that maybe you work with, or even people you just hang with. Sometimes you think you know who they are, and then
Mm-hmm.
you hear a story and you go, say, what? What? Hi, Fiona. Dinner time in Switzerland. Well, set us up a plate. We'll join you.
Love having you here, Fiona. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The ideas around death are so vast. I remember when my mother-in-law was passing, and she was Catholic, and I think she was really afraid at the end that she might go to hell, and that made me very, very sad because I don't believe in,
Mhm.
heaven and hell as places that we go to. I really just think it's a state of consciousness, so I can be in heaven or in hell right here, right now. I don't have to die to get there. So, um,
Absolutely.
I really felt bad for her experience, and there was nothing I could do or say
Mhm.
that would change that. It was a lifetime of, that message of here's what happens if you ever make a mistake or you ever sin. I don't
Mhm.
know about you, but I've sinned a lot.
I don't think there's any one of us that hasn't sinned. And for me, what sin means is missing the mark.
Exactly.
Making a mistake, an error.
Yeah.
And we come into this world, I believe, mostly not as bad people, but sometimes we choose bad behaviors, and
Mhm.
that doesn't make us bad people. It
No, it
just
certainly
makes us
doesn't.
human beings.
Yeah, and I mean, truly, we're here to experience living in all of its shapes, forms, and sizes, and everything. So sometimes we are going to do things that push boundaries and may not be acceptable to the people
Hmm.
around us, which does not make it bad,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
I
It's
love.
also the meaning that we've given things, right, as a
Mm,
society.
absolutely. Well, and that's where the issue around death and dying is too, is about what we think about it. Oh no, it's awful, evil, terrible, bad. Why does this have to happen? Well,
Hmm.
if it didn't, do you know what our population would be right
Hmm.
now?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
there wouldn't be a spot on this planet where any one of us could actually stand.
Hmm.
There's a process. We're here and we live and we share, and then we leave. And even when you look at, we're coming into winter here. It snowed today and yesterday. But what's interesting is the leaves fall from the trees and go into the soil, nu- nourishing. So the leaves die, they nourish the soil, which allows the tree then to grow. And so
Hmm.
our body is like that. It's like it disintegrates so that the essence of us becomes whatever, so much more, so much bigger,
Hmm.
brighter, better, or a new pathway. I don't know. Who cares? We go on and we continue. I don't believe that I've ever been born and I'll never die. So, but the body, yeah, yeah, it's going to wear out, or I'm going to get bored of
Absolutely.
what's going on and let it go, right?
Mhm. It's
And thank you
nature,
for
and we're
subscribing.
part of nature. Sorry,
Yeah.
Barbara, I spoke over you. What did you just say?
I was just saying thank you to Fiona for subscribing to our newsletter. Yay, Fiona,
Yay!
number
Thank
one.
you, Fiona. Yeah, I was just saying it's part of nature, right? And we
Yes,
are part of nature.
we are.
And
We
we're
are.
part of the whole, everything, the one, everything that is and isn't.
Well, that's it. I think one of the things that, when we look at different ways of dying, of course, we have different judgments about different ways of dying. Medically assisted dying, some people have a big problem with that. They just consider it suicide, and that's wrong and bad. Not my opinion, but some people's opinion. For me, if I was in a place where I couldn't heal or I no longer had the ability to think for myself, I would choose medically assisted dying. And my husband knows that.
Hmm.
And so, it's important that we have directives in place. If somebody diagnosed me with Alzheimer's tomorrow, I would immediately set up that medically assisted dying. That in
Hmm.
the moment when I could no longer remember my family,
Hmm.
please just give me the injection or the cocktail or the whatever it is that you do, and
Hmm.
I'm out of here, because that's not how I want to live. The the energy that we have when a person does commit suicide, that they hang themselves or jump off a bridge or whatever they do to end their lives. There's a lot of judgment around that,
Hmm.
about how could they do this and why did this happen and why
Hmm.
couldn't I have stopped it? And so the emotions that the people left
Judgment
behind, both
and guilt and
judgment,
anger.
guilt.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's, one of the things in the memorial services I've done, or the celebrations of life I've done for people who've committed suicide, I always talk about, number one, here's what's going on in the room. There's anger, there's guilt, there's fear, and there's a big question. Why?
Mhm.
And I'm here to tell you there's no answer to why. We're never going to know that for sure.
Mhm.
And we have a choice. We can focus on the moment that this person that you love so deeply took their life.
Mhm.
Or we can look at the life that caused us to love them in the first place.
Mhm.
And where we choose to focus will determine how much, like how we feel about all this and whether we can come to terms to it. So it's fascinating what happens when people hear that. It's like, what, I don't have to just focus on suicide or murder, or
Mhm.
I can go, oh, wait a minute. How did this
Mhm.
person touch my life? What
Mhm.
was it that gave meaning? And then I can grieve them rather than going, why, or I should have known, or how did this, right? All of
Mhm.
these
Grieve
questions.
them and honor them, right? Honor their lives. Honor,
Yeah.
people think that suicide is a weakness, but it takes a lot of courage to complete suicide. A lot
I
of
would think
courage,
so. Yeah.
and it's not. I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm just saying that it's not easy. It's not easy for the person. It's not easy for anybody, family, friends, and many people, would find this a very, very hard topic
Mm,
to have a conversation about,
yeah.
and it's hard to understand. I think that's where
Yeah.
the challenge comes in, and will we ever understand? I don't think it's about
Oh,
understanding. I think it's about accepting. It's really about accepting and loving and appreciating all those things. We'll never truly understand.
no. And if we can let go of our attachment, um, I think it's the Buddhists that say, attachment is the cause of suffering. Um, I think sometimes if we could just let go of our attachment to what we need, because
Mm-hmm.
it's all about what I need, right? I
Mm-hmm.
want to know why, I want to know how, I want to know when, I want to know, I want to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if I just accepted that this was somehow the soul journey,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't understand it, and just accept that I don't understand it because it's
Mm-hmm.
not my path, it's theirs, and then honor the life that is left to me as I celebrate the life that they did have and what caused me to love them in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't imagine what it must be like to have someone that that I love
Yeah.
be that desperate and
Make
complete
that
that.
decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go to a commercial break. You are watching Spirit Cafe with Barbara and Cheryl, and we are truly delighted that you're here. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter and check out our YouTube channel, Spirit Cafe Show at YouTube. And we'll be back in just a minute with more Death and Dying. Don't go away.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. So, Cheryl, you were mentioning, the whole suicide thing, and that you hadn't had anybody close to you go through that. I had a brother who committed suicide at age 37, and it was really hard for the family. And of course, that was, before I sort of fully understood this philosophy, and there was a lot of angst for everyone, I think, around that concept and what had happened. But for me, it was interesting because he and I actually had a connection after the fact. And I don't know what people think about that, but sometimes after people have passed, they do come into our awareness. And I had an experience of him where he asked me to do the eulogy for his memorial service. Now, the church that he belonged to, I could not do it. But here's what was most interesting about it is that he was in the only way I could describe him in that moment when he came to me was love, absolute love. There was no mistake, there was no accident. What he did was necessary in his life path, and that became very, very clear. And he was just love, just love. It was remarkable. So it was very healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't do the eulogy, but I wrote a poem, which is at the beginning of my book that I wrote on conducting memorials. And that poem is what I handed out to everybody at the service. And then all of us who really loved him, we went to a bar and got a little drunk and told stories and cried, and it was lovely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Well, for me to hear that you basically heard from him,
I did.
and that sort of helped you be able to cope and to accept and be okay,
Yeah.
knowing that
Yeah.
he was coming across as love and
Yes.
as being okay
He
as well,
was.
right? Because we always worry about that. We worry about
Yeah.
what will happen to this person's soul. Wayne shares that he believes that souls that suicide go into healing time. There's so many different beliefs. Some people, I believe, well, my father, he was a manic depressive,
Mm.
and he was depressed for many, many years. And I truly believe that if he didn't believe, and I think he may have told me this once, if he didn't believe that if he completed suicide, he would come back again and it would be harder next time, I think he would have. But that was his belief system, that if he did that, the next time it would be harder, and he just couldn't face that. And so he carried on living in his depression.
Yeah. It's interesting, here in New Thought, we teach that consciousness creates. And so I often think about people who do suicide and wonder what the experience is once on the other side, because who we are continues.
Mm-hmm.
We continue in the same stream of consciousness. And so if there's a consciousness of, fear and angst and anger, are we carrying that type of energy over? And is that then causing some kind of interruption in how we move on in our life stream? And
Mm-hmm.
so I often think about that. I know for my brother, when we had our communication, I wouldn't call it a talk, but our communication, he was very clear that he was fine and that this was necessary for him. He could not, in his physical form, change. The church that he attended, I would call a cult. because you're not allowed to associate with birth family. You're not allowed to have friends outside of the organization. So he couldn't figure a way out of it. And so he took his life. And what's interesting is just the immense love and freedom I felt when he came to me. I knew he'd made the right choice. Did anybody else in the family understand that? Absolutely not. But for me, I was able to write this beautiful poem as a tribute to him because I felt such love for him and I knew he was fine. Now, we don't always get that. We don't always get when somebody passes that they're going to come back and spend time with us. But in the moments when it happens, it can be really profound. Just doesn't happen often. We can't count on it.
And talking about that as well, I know that a lot of people as well will look for ways of connecting, like through psychics, and things like that. How do you feel about that?
It's funny. I don't put a lot of weight in it because I don't think we can force the universe. I don't think we can force our way to the other side or back and forth. I think, we can try to manipulate things, but it doesn't really work. And so I think when we surrender fully, when we're really present with life as it is, I think moments like that can occur. And some people live in a way that the veil is very thin for them and they're kind of receiving information all the time. But I know for me, it's a rarity. And I remember one time in meditation stepping out of my body. And that was a moment of great healing because I no longer feared death, because I realized I'm not this. Because when I stepped out, I was still me fully and completely. There was nothing. I could still feel the body, even though I wasn't in it. It was really quite remarkable. So that changed my whole perception of death and dying. And then, of course, the situation with my brother, that also changed things for me as well, going, okay. And when it comes to psychics, I believe there are psychics who absolutely can tell you all manner of stuff. And we have to remember that what they're doing is they're following a stream of consciousness. Now, we always have free will, so we can change it. But I'll share a story. A dear friend of mine, we were friends for almost 40 years. And she passed away at the age of 52. And that was in 2002. So December 31st of 2001, I was in Calgary visiting family, and I spent some time with her. And she was a psychic as well as a teacher and a spiritual speaker, and did all kinds of great stuff. So she said, "Oh, I'm going to give you a reading for New Year's." I'm like, yeah, okay. She's my best friend. So I'm thinking, yeah, right. You're just going to tell me all kind of good stuff because that's what you think I want to hear. But I didn't put a lot of weight on it. I was like, in my mind, I'm going, you know me too well. Probably nothing you say is going to come of this. So she told me two things. The first was that I would get married in 2002. Now, this is December 31st, 2001, and I'm not dating anybody. I don't know anybody. I've not met anybody, right? There's like no way this is happening. And then the second thing she told me is I'm going to have another baby. And I looked at her and I said, okay, you've lost it now because I know I can't have any more children. Number one, I'm 45 years old. And number two, I had my tubes tied when my youngest son was born because I ain't never having any more children. So I looked at her and I said, well, obviously I'm going to, marry some guy who's got a child. And she goes, no, you're going to have a child. And I went, okay, I think you've lost it. So fast forward, I meet Pierre in February. We get married in October 2002. And our daughter is born from my body in 2005.
Wow.
And so I look at that and I know she's on the other side laughing her ass off going, yeah, you didn't believe me, but fooled you.
Yeah.
but it's like sometimes, we look at these things, and I think we have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes people will tell us negative things, or kind of bad things that maybe we don't want to hear, but we always have the choice to change it.
Mm-hmm.
We can look at whatever a person has said and go, wow, and believe it to be true, and go, okay, what can I do on my life path that would allow me to shift that experience so I could create something else?
Mm-hmm.
And so the connections are there, for sure. They're there. I absolutely believe them. And not everybody who puts up a placard saying I'm a psychic, $10 for a reading, is in fact a psychic. So
Yeah.
we have to, again, like all the people we meet and all the places we go, we have to listen to our body, our intuition.
Yeah.
Is this right for me?
Exactly. We've got to discern, because there are people out there who will take a chance to make a buck, right?
Of course.
Or two. But it makes me think about, it's so interesting how some people are unwilling to consider just so much possibility
Yeah.
that's out there, because we can't see it, right? But yet,
Yeah.
look at electricity. We'll
Yes,
put on a light, and where does that come from? Look at how we are communicating right now and looking at each other, right? And how does that happen, right? Bluetooth, all these things that we can't see, and yet we are living with and experiencing. So who's to say that because we can't see the continuation of life, that it doesn't exist? That we can't see, I don't know, just even potential futures, or things like that. I just it just blows my mind. I always think to myself that it's so much bigger than we can comprehend. We have no idea, but at least contemplate, these possibilities, because there is a lot of evidence, not just talk about people's experiences. Even science and spirituality, they used to be like this, and nowadays they're like this, right? Absolutely. And so it's fascinating for me. And at the end of the day, I think what's important is that what you believe sits well with you. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says, and it helps you be a better person. You live your life, in truth for yourself. To me, those are the things that are important. But, having said that, I will say that my belief system certainly enables me to be okay with many things, and live not out of fear, but live out of joy and acceptance and peace. This peace. I don't have a fear of death and dying. And and quite honestly, when most people around me cross over, I'm not sad. I celebrate for them. I really do. And some people might find that strange and cold, and I don't know, but that's just how it helps me live and be who I am.
And I have this belief, nobody has to share it, by the way, but I have this belief that at a very subconscious level, we choose our death, the way, the means, and the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not consciously. I mean, I don't know when I'm going,
mm-hmm.
but at a deep level, I've heard too many people talk about their death before an accident happens, or
it's like they knew.
Yeah, it's like they absolutely had an awareness of it. It's things like teenagers who give away all their worldly possessions.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that really matters. Their stereos, their iPods, their computers, the stuff that they're never going to be without, even for a minute. They give all that away, and the next day, there's a car crash and they die in that crash. it's like just I've heard so many stories like that where someone has. I remember a funeral that I did about 2 years ago, and this young man, 17 years old, drowned, and he was talking with his family in a way that suggested, but they didn't think about it until after, that he was not going to be around for a long time. Like that, he sat back and said, he was preparing them, like when I die, and like who talks like that when you're 17? 17-year-olds think they're invincible, right? But it was certain things like that that I've heard, and then some accident occurs that is highly unexpected, and all of a sudden they're gone, or they get a health diagnosis that takes them very quickly. And when we listen to conversations, we can sometimes, not usually at the time, but after the fact, go, wow, that person was saying this or that, and all of a sudden it tied together. And I think there is, at a very deep level, we do know. We have an idea, and we make our choice.
Well, for me, I'd go even further. I think we plan it.
Oh, I agree.
I think, I think that we plan why we are here and what we've come here to do or achieve, and at what time it will be good for us to leave. And the interesting thing, though, is it's so much more complex. It sounds simple when we speak like this, but it's so much more complex, right? Because we're all one, and we're all interwoven with each other. And so all the choices we've made with other people, and it's really quite complex, because we are all here for a purpose, and we choose that purpose with other people who have maybe the same or a different purpose, and will experience something because of what we're going to do. Or, it's like, wow, it's just,
a dance with the universe.
Absolutely.
What's going to happen next?
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, when we think about the universe, we think about nature, it's just so absolutely unbelievably amazing, beautiful, awesome. I watched something on YouTube called Fantastic Fungi, and about nature. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It is incredible. And it just, those kind of things, when you look at the body and how it heals itself, how it functions without us having to do anything, how can they not be something bigger, how can they not be a power, a presence, an essence, energy? It's all energy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, just, too much.
We live in an intelligent universe that operates through the power of our mind to create. And we can block it, stop it, and shut it down, or allow it to flow and create and be. And it's, how am I going to correspond with the possibilities that present themselves? Because they're infinite. They're infinite. And I love that idea of the intelligence of this energy. That somehow there is, when you look at the order of things, how could we doubt for a moment that there isn't something back of all of this that is intelligent? Like, it's fascinating.
And that, how can we doubt that we are a part of it, that we are it, right? We live in it, we be in it, we are part of it, so it's part of us.
Yeah, it's all of us. Which means then that we're all connected, right? Because if the universe is a system of energy, then everything in it is energy.
Yeah.
And we live, move, and have our being in it. So we're energy. And energy is neither born nor dies. It is forever in existence, simply changing form.
Exactly.
Ta-da! Death.
There we go. Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I love these conversations because we never know where it's going to go.
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that we never know when it, and even when we have conversations and we're not online and we're just talking to each other, we laugh and we say, "Oh, we should have recorded that because that could have been a show."
Well, that's the thing. I think that's what I love about some of the friends and stuff I have is that we will have these conversations and they go wherever they go, and it's really exciting to simply let them move, and see what happens next. And I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a girlfriend, and it was like my mind went here and there and here and there and all over the place. And she goes, "Whoa, ADD in action."
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Like my mind can go in 1,000 directions. But if we follow the thread of it, there's usually a thread that pulls it all together. There's
Yeah.
something about it that is connecting it. And when I look at life and I look at our journey and I look at the ways that we separate, I think it's time that instead of somebody said to me earlier today, I was talking to Anania Ayudali, and she mentioned a quote. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but if we build distrust among people, we can control them. And I went, wow. So what if we built trust? What if we saw the connection, and instead of competing with one another, we began to support one another? Instead of distrust, we chose to trust. What if we listened to each other's conversations without judging it as bad and wrong, and instead go, wow, that's an interesting perspective, and here's mine. And we listened with the desire to understand rather than disprove, disagree. Like, what would the world look like then?
Can you imagine?
Oh my
What
goodness.
if? Yeah. To
What?
get over the need to be right.
Oh,
To get over, the need for everybody else to think and be like us.
and we would hate that because it would be so damn boring.
Absolutely.
You
We'd probably kill each other, which is exactly what we're doing.
Oh my goodness, it's so true, because I think when I think about the ways in which we do turn around and cause separation, it's such a big illusion because we cannot separate from each other, and so we're always kind of rubbing against each other in one way or another energetically, and it's causing that friction because we don't want it to be as beautiful as it really is. We want to find fault because we don't love ourselves enough to just go, I can love you because I love me. I
And
can
it's
accept
okay.
you.
It's okay to be different. It's okay that you have your own thoughts and beliefs and you live your own life. I love that. I respect that. Right?
Yeah,
Can you imagine if we,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I love Fiona's comment, trust is the platinum thread. So
Absolutely.
rich, so
Yes,
rich.
Fiona.
I love that. Fiona,
Absolutely.
you're awesome. You're awesome. I have to come to Switzerland one day and meet in person.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of connecting, and we've been talking about that for a while with the different organizations that we're part of, and it's about connecting. And in my life, I'm looking, how do I serve the greater good? And so in the moments when I catch myself being dismissive or judgmental of something, I want to bring myself back to, oh, emergency alert here. I don't know. Anyway, we just got beeped. Emergency alert. But I think just sort of allowing ourselves to be where we are as we are, to not judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, to find a way to love ourselves enough so that we can then love the person or people in front of us. And as we do that, if we're loving enough, then probably they will begin to love as well. And now we can create a synergy rather than that disconnect. Because the truth is we can't actually disconnect. It is a
No,
fabrication of the imagination. And
exactly.
the connection is the infinite truth, the
Mhm.
ever truth. And that's the place of our power. And that's the place where we actually could create lasting harmony in our world. Peace could happen.
Mhm. So what I think what you're saying is be the change you want to see.
In the world. Ta-da.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
somebody famous said that once.
I think so too. Who was it?
That was Gandhi. That was Gandhi who said that.
Yeah.
Be the change you want to see. And that's, it's available to all of us when we look at the people who've really made a big difference in our world. They've been the ones to stand in their own integrity and speak the truth, even in the face of ignorance, even in the face of, I'm going to kill you, which is pretty big.
Yeah.
They stood for what they believed in always. And that takes courage, because we are afraid of death and dying.
Mm-hmm.
But if we weren't afraid of death and dying, would we be more courageous?
What a wonderful question to end on. Wow. If we weren't afraid of death and dying, would we be more courageous?
Yeah. Would we stand up to stupid?
Hmm.
Would we be willing to stand naked in the wind, going, it's all life?
Yeah. Would we live more fully?
I think we would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good points. Very good thoughts. Wow. And you know what? The truth of the matter is that we are all going to die, and we don't know when. Consciously, we are not aware when. And so it could be tomorrow, next week, it could be in 30, 40, 50 years, right? 60,
Could be
70,
5
80,
minutes from now.
depending on where people are in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could be get up from the chair and drop dead of a heart attack. That's how my mom died. She just got up to go to the washroom and boom, done.
Wow.
So,
what a way to go.
I know, it's brilliant. I'm going, long, extended, painful death or Alzheimer's or whatever. No. Mom did it right. I'm done. And out we go. So I think there's ways of dying. There's ways of being. There's ways of living. And, back to what the Buddhist says, suffering comes from the way we think about what's going on rather than what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So what are your final thoughts today, Cheryl?
Well, I'm really happy we had this conversation. I think it's a conversation we could continue, and I would love to hear other people's beliefs and where they're at. So please, feel free to email us at spiritcafeshow@gmail.com. We've created a new channel, Spirit Cafe Show, on YouTube. And we invite you to sign up to the newsletter so that you receive the links in the future, so that you receive the information, because that's how it's going to go out and how it's going to be. And I'm so grateful, Barbara, for your sharing, for your caring, for your wisdom, your experience. And those are really, my last thoughts are thank you. I'm so grateful.
Well, and thank you. I love you, my dear sister. And we're out of time. See you all next week. Mwah. Love you. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye for now.
It's a sure thing. Change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at